St. Louis sports fans, it's a little bit of a premature into the season than what we were kind of expecting or hoping for. But hey, here we are with our season recap for the 2024-25 season for St. Louis Blues. We got a lot to get over with the from the regular season reflection, going over to the postseason, and then kind of gonna go over what we're thinking of how the uh, off season is gonna kind of go. So let's jump right in. So James, I know probably for a lot of us here in St. Louis, it's still got to be a little bit on the painful side uh, from how the postseason kind of ended for the St. Louis Blues. But I mean, looking at just to kind of start with things on how the regular season went, I thought it was a relatively good. I mean, you started out in a little bit of a lull, but as the season kind of progresses, and obviously we've had milestones, we've had acquisitions and everything through the regular season that's ultimately kind of got to the Blues to where they were. What were your thoughts of how the season kind of started and ended for the St. Louis Blues before we kind of get into all the meat and potatoes of it?
Yeah, looking back over the last few days, I coined the term used by uh, the Apollo 13 mission. You remember that was the astronauts stranded and they had to come back home. Called a successful failure. By success, I mean, and I'm not trying to necessarily poke jokes about it, but it's kind of true because they made a success because they made the playoffs and they did a
Mhm.
vast improvement. Come February, we weren't expecting this. We were thinking trades are going to happen. The retool is going to keep going, but they streaked to 12 wins in a row, made it to the playoffs, and came within 1.6 seconds of going to the second round, almost beating the President's Trophy winning Winnipeg Jets. But unfortunately, that didn't work that way, and they lost in double overtime, get eliminated by the Jets. So the Jets move on. The Blues, go to the Cardinals game a few days later, and that's hockey for you. It sucks in a way, but like you said, it was a successful season in my opinion. They did move up point wise. I think Doug Armstrong coined, like he said, about 5% increase, 4 to 5%. So
Yeah.
from 92 points last year, 96 gets you in the playoffs. But they just didn't have enough gas in the tank to get them to the second round this year.
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah, as what James just said, they had 96 points this season, totaling them to 44 wins, 30 losses, and 8 overtime losses. I mean, seeing from where this team went at the beginning of the season under Drew Bannister, you saw that dynamic of that team just kind of like going out and trying to do whatever they could with whatever they had, and then you come November, you have the acquisition of Jim Montgomery, and then you kind of see a little bit of the season kind of take a little bit of a decent turn. They started winning a few games, um, and then that kind of that that high of getting a new coach, it seemed like it kind of fell off a little bit after a
Mhm.
certain point. But they were still, I felt like they were doing a lot better than what they did under Drew Bannister. Now, this isn't knocking Drew by any means of the word. He was a inexperienced coach in that framework that he hasn't really coached in the NHL to where he's only really had his time in the AHL, and it's a lot different of an animal than what you see in the NHL than what you do in the
Mhm.
everyday of the AHL. But going from that and having Jim Montgomery come in, who is a veteran coach, and then maybe like a month later, you have, and it's like middle December, you get the acquisition of uh, Cam Fowler, and which I mean, I don't know what your expectations of Cam whenever he came over. Mine was he was with Anaheim for the longest time. I think it was since he's pretty much came into the league. But you saw a guy that was not really. I didn't really know how to feel about the Cam Fowler trade at the time. I didn't know if it was going to help the team or not help the team. what was your kind of thoughts whenever the Blues had the acquisition in early December of Cam Fowler and the trade to Anaheim?
Well, I remember that there's a lot of teams interested in Fowler. And upon the initial trade for him, one, I was surprised because I didn't expect him to come to St. Louis. I do think he's a solid defenseman, but I considered him more of a minor upgrade to Nick Leddy. When that first thought, I thought, man, another veteran defenseman. Yeah, he's got offensive prowess. He's good, but is it going to help the team? And then all of a sudden, he became like, Nick Leddy 10 years ago, where he's pumping in
Hmm.
goals, assists, ended up being one of the top scoring defensemen. Pretty much after the trade, he was high not only in the Blues, but really the NHL took notice. Like that was a great trade. It ended up being a steal because not only do we just give up a draft pick, but Anaheim took on some of his salary. So he's literally making
Yeah,
Nick Leddy money, but he's playing Jay Bomeister defense, where he's a
yeah,
great partner to Pareko. He really opened up the power play, and just that skill with the puck was just phenomenal. Like it seemed like every time that puck went to him, he was able to do something with it. So
yeah.
like initial response, like I agree with you, Bruno. I didn't think it was a great move. I thought, well, maybe it is kind of necessary. They needed another good veteran body, but he was above and beyond much more than I ever expected to contribute to the Blues this year.
Oh, by far. I mean, you see him. Yeah, he's a veteran defenseman, and granted, you didn't know you were going to be having the unfortunate circumstance of losing Pareko a little bit after everything happened with the Four Nations tournament and
Hmm.
everything. But uh, I mean, getting a guy like Cam Fowler, who obviously after missing Torrey Krug for an entire year, having another veteran defenseman in the midst was going to be good. But yeah, I mean, I was the same way as you. I did not think that he was going to come out and have just a off the wall, like pretty much half of the year that he had with the Blues.
Hmm.
And I mean, prior to him coming to the St. Louis Blues, I don't think he had really any. I'm thinking maybe had a couple of points in Anaheim, but then you just see a surge from him once he
Hmm.
came to the Blues, and it really started, I believe, with whenever we saw him in the Winter Classic against
Right.
the Chicago Blackhawks, and that was really like
Hmm.
the moment where you saw him just from there on take off,
Right.
and that was huge for him. It was huge for the team to have somebody like that because prior to losing Torrey Krug, the only other real player that they had that was really doing much for the power play was Perunovic. But I mean, still he was kind of here and there before he got uh, dealt either. I think it was waivers or a trade. I can't remember exactly which one it was, but
He was
once
traded to
he's
the Islanders, I think is what it was.
that's right.
I thought.
I
Yeah.
couldn't remember if it was waivers and then he went to the Islanders or if it was a trade to the Islanders. But
Yeah.
I mean, after that, you just see how well he does at quarterbacking the power play,
Hmm.
and just his offensive even contribution was huge for the team because that was whenever they started having that big surge of defensive help with the offense going into the opposition zone and getting a lot of goals in from I'd say Winter Classic time into the Four Nations time is when you saw a lot of this kind of taking shape, and a lot of that I felt like had to do just from the experience of having an expert coach or veteran coach with Jim Montgomery.
Right. I think I think you're dead solid perfect on that, really. Like, just like I said before, just to see what he did. I know in Anaheim, I don't think he even had a goal. He had like 7 assists. Like, that's all he
I
had
think so.
again
Yeah.
yeah. And then he comes back. I don't know what his final stats were. I'd have to look at that real quick, but it was phenomenally different. And, that strengthened the blue line more than we could possibly imagine, which was very important to this team. It brought a lot of veteran presence, and then that also helped on the long run because then that drops back somebody like Ryan Suter, who's 40 years old. He doesn't need to be playing top 4 minutes. He
No.
pushed back into that third pairing with between Matt Kessel and Nick Leddy, and that was a good third pair defenseman you had there. So
Yep.
it goes to show you that if you could pick up a guy of Fowler's caliber who turned it around like he did, that was a big success to this team. That led to what we saw at the end of the season and in the playoffs. He dominated. You
Yep.
know, he's the highest scoring player on both teams in the at the end of the first round.
Yep, I would definitely agree. I mean, just seeing how a lot of those guys played. I mean, it's not just a little bit of those guys, but I mean, you saw the contributions from the offseason uh with Dylan Holloway and Philip Broberg too. I mean,
Hmm.
those guys have even made seismic contributions just to this team and just the time that they've already been with the team. I mean, granted, yeah, you saw Broberg and Holloway uh, get hit with injuries some at different points through the season,
Hmm.
but it was like whenever they came back from injury, it took a little bit of time for Broberg to kind of get his feet back with him, but it just seemed like once he did, it was just he was doing so well for the team and so well just on the ice in general that you he got back to where he was at. It felt like before he even got injured, with how well he
Right.
started out in the beginning of the season. And Holloway, it seemed like he was a little bit of somebody that kind of took a little bit to kind of get going, even though he started out pretty well. It towards the end of the season, but whenever he got injured, it was going to more or less be a lock in that he was probably going to be in one of those top four or top six forwards for this team. And I mean,
Hmm.
we kind of figured that's where he probably was going to be at regardless whenever he came to the Blues. Um, but I mean, just the amount of contributions that this team has made, uh, just from beginning of the season to the time of Four Nations, you could steadily see a little bit of an increase, and then just the run that these guys went on. I mean, they were very close to making. Uh, it sounded like Armstrong was pretty close to making moves at the trade deadline, but with how they came out of the Four Nations break and how well they were doing, and even Army said it uh, in a news conference after the season had ended, is like he had been talking with a few player or a few teams about different players, but once he saw that they were starting to play really good, he's like, "No, sorry guys, like we're gonna see where things go with this." And ultimately, you go on a 12-game winning streak, and you end up at the end of the season. I think it was what 19-4 or 19-3-2 or something along those
Right.
lines.
Hmm.
And and even Doug Armstrong was like, in order to get to probably into the playoffs, you're going to have to be like a 650, 670 team going in. And it's like they haven't done that at all since like the last couple seasons. And just the where they were able to get to in that time frame was huge.
Right. 100%. I mean, it's really at the end of the day, it's a culmination of everything gelling at the right moment. Yeah, I would, you know, it's kind of you don't want to say it's a shame that it took 12 win streak to get in the playoffs, but they did exactly what needed to be done to get in the playoffs. And
Yep.
that's really the team coming together, buying into the system that Jim Montgomery put together, and they played it pretty much perfectly, really, to a point. There's always struggles on a team, but the fact that they were way out of the playoffs in February to make it to the playoffs on the last day, but still made it to the playoffs is a sign of great promise, not only for this season, but future seasons from here on out. Like that's a good sign. And Army said it best. He said one thing about the trade deadline. He says the team will dictate what I do. They went on a
Yep.
streak. They wanted to keep going, so he kept the team together. Didn't make any moves, and it was beneficial because they made the playoffs and they did well in the playoffs. Besides losing in the first round, so again, that's a combination of everyone coming together, playing the right way, playing the right style of hockey that could get you to the playoffs. And hopefully this isn't just I don't want this to be an outlier. I hope this is a sign of times to come.
For sure. And I mean, kind of going on that, from where we saw everything kind of come from last season going into this season, who would you say is probably the player that had the biggest statistical leap from season to season?
I mean, first off, you go with Dylan Holloway. He signed as a restricted free agent here, comes from the Oilers. He puts up 60 plus points, is a great line mate for Jordan Kyrou. Those two absolutely gelled. That's my number
Yeah,
one pick. Um, and honestly, Cole Braco had a hell of a year. Had he not got hurt, he probably would have been a possible finalist for the Norris Trophy. So
yep,
um, that guy there, and then honestly, my really the guy that I will go to war for every single year he stays here is Jordan Bennington. The stats don't always tell the truth. I know a lot of people are like, oh, he's okay, he's okay. That dude is a money goalie, and you don't see money goalies like that anymore. A guy who rises to the occasion when they basically say Bennington, we need to win. He gives you a win or gives you the absolute best chance to win. It showed in the playoffs all year. He was, I mean, no matter what, to me, he was the first round MVP in that series. There is no other player that played better than Jordan Binnington, next to maybe Cam Fowler as a close second. But Benner gets my nod. Like I said, he's here for a few more years, and I have zero worry about the goaltending when he's between the pipes.
of course. Yeah, that was going to be kind of my pick was going to be Bennington. I mean, seeing how he went from last year, and even not just last year, just like the few years of starting out here in St. Louis, and then you see how he was kind of the guy that went after players if like times got down or anything, and then just seeing his maturity has grown
Right.
over the last couple of seasons and into how he really held himself into this season, it was night and day difference.
Yeah.
But Brandon, thanks for joining with us today. What who would you pick as your player for the probably the most statistical leap coming from last season into this season?
If you're not going to count a guy like Zach Bolduc, who didn't play a whole bunch last season and got a bunch of time, found himself in the lineup almost every night. I mean, you're looking at a guy who finished the year, he played 72 games and 19 goals. This is what I'm looking at. He's a plus 20 on the season, 17 assists, 36 points. For a guy who did not play a lot the year before, I thought he had a pretty solid season.
For sure. I really enjoyed watching Zach Bolduc play this year. I mean, he didn't really feel like he really knew what he was up to, but once halfway through the season, it seemed like he really got his footing in. I don't know if it was getting put on a different line or no, it was just getting the acquisition of Montgomery. Yeah, because I felt like once he got into the mix and just told like Bolduc, like, hey, just get the puck and just shoot.
Yeah.
That's all I'm wanting, all I'm asking you of doing. And once more or less he had like that talk, it just seemed like he just took off from there. And it was crazy to see how well he did. But we were talking about a little bit of the statistical leap from season to season. Who would you say out of everybody on the Blues was the most consistent? Either James or Brandon.
Most consistent, I think I would have to go with Robert Thomas. Game in and game out, he was, especially towards the end of the season, he really kind of came on, especially in not only just in the goal side of things, but on the assist side of things too. He was able to get pucks to guys to get the puck in the net. I think that's the biggest jump there, like consistently. For a guy is Robert Thomas. I think so that's just where my mind, automatically goes to say Robert Thomas all throughout the whole season was there, putting up points.
Yeah. For sure. Yeah, I mean, I was thinking him. I mean, aside from either him or, I mean, I hate to say the same name again, but Benner. I mean, he played from the start of the season. He seemed like he was really good in net. He had a lot of help from Hofer when he was able to give the time up to him, and able to get refreshed to be able to come in for a few of the other games that, because it seemed like Bennington got a lot of help from him this year. I think Hofer played in what 25, 26 games compared to what he did
31.
last season.
Yeah.
Okay, 31.
31 this year.
But that was that, and we've seen it to where that Bennington wasn't really that much of a whole season goaltender, and he was always kind of like you got to give him some breaks between the season whenever you can, and just the ability of Hofer and how he went through everything and how well he has progressed, that ultimately gave the team enough time to give Bennington enough rest to be able to come out in games that really mattered, to get wins that the Blues were able to get. But James, wow, who would you say would be your player that you felt was the most consistent throughout the season?
Let's face it, from an offensive standpoint, from an all-around game, and just really a maturation of a skill, I'm going to go with Jordan Kyrou. Kyrou, again, brought in 30-plus goals, 34 assists, played all 82 games. And it wasn't just that, but it was just his all-around play changed so much. He played better defense. Like, he threw checks. Like, he made smart plays. He wasn't just Mr. Offense. He was out there getting into the right points, getting the right positions to, not just be a goal scorer, but set up his teammates. And, attribute that to Braden Shen and Dylan Holloway. But, Kyrou had a great overall 100% turnaround from last year. Even though he scored 30-plus goals last year, this was a much better Jordan Kyrou. This is the guy that you did sign a contract like he has. This is what you want from him on a regular basis.
Minus the final two periods in overtime against Winnipeg.
Apples and oranges. It's all good.
Yeah. But I mean, just like what you guys were talking about, we've had a lot of contributions like that throughout this season. I mean, contributions more of milestones, I would say. But I mean, you had some big celebrations this year. We had Braden Shen celebrate his 1,000th game. We had Ryan Suter celebrate his 1,500th game. Kyrou led the team in overall goals at 36. Robert Thomas led the team in assists and in points. He had 60 assists and 81 points. The team set franchise records like crazy this year. Nathan Walker. Yep.
Didn't Fowler hit 1,000 games too?
Yeah, he did.
I thought
at the Winter Classic.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. I did forget about that one. Shit.
Yep.
Shoot. But I mean, you saw Nathan Walker set the franchise record for hits. You saw the franchise record for the 12 consecutive games, and then the 11 consecutive home game wins. And then Jordan Bennington setting the franchise record for the most wins. And I'm probably forgetting a few, like the one for Cam Fowler, but it's just the leaps and bounds of what this team was able to do this season. After what we have seen from this team over the last couple seasons, has been a turning point for this team, and it's good to see how they did in the regular season, and then coming into the postseason, I thought they did well against a team that was the President's Trophy winners. But out of everything, what were some of the things that you guys thought that start with you, Brandon, that they could have done better against the Winnipeg Jets?
Oh, okay. I'm glad you shortened that up. I was gonna say all season freaking 6-on-5 play. But I think we all see that. Just finishing games. It had to have been the the biggest issue. I don't remember if it was this year or last year. We talked about, how slow they started at the beginning of games, and then it'd take a period or two for them to catch up. I want to say that was more on last season than it was this season.
Yeah, it was more last season.
This season I don't know why they struggled so much finishing games. Like I really don't. You saw it a lot towards the end of the season too. You saw it against Pittsburgh, Vancouver. Who else was there? There was another game in there too. Anaheim. Was it the Anaheim game? No, that was a big one. That was 7-2 win. Never mind.
It was a big one. I know they had one against the Panthers where they were up. I think
it was just
2, or it was tied 2-2 or 1-1, and then they came back and got the game within like seconds.
Yeah, it was just I think that would be the biggest thing for me is that they couldn't finish games, and you saw that throughout the season, and it unfortunately bled into the playoffs, and that's the reason why they were eliminated in Game 7 too. Was for a reason that bugged them all year.
Yeah, I would definitely agree. They had a hard time on the 6-on-5. Going into the postseason and even in the postseason, the Blues were ranked last on 6-on-5 play and being able to keep teams from getting that goal that mattered for them. Yeah. It sucks because you saw that they gotten better from the previous season, that they were able to start games a lot better this season. And even in the postseason, we saw them get ahead in a lot of games, but that was something that they ultimately had trouble in. James, what was something that caught your eye throughout the postseason with the Winnipeg Jets that you thought they could have done a little bit better in?
Besides 6-on-5, I think one of the biggest things I noticed that the team struggled with on a regular basis, it seemed like, was it just seemed like in their defensive end, they just weren't really playing smart defense. When they did it well for the most part, but they relied on Binnington a lot to make the key saves. They were just kind of, I don't want to say lazy with the puck, but they weren't really looking for that outlet pass to stir up the offense again. Once it was in their zone, and Winnipeg, I give them credit, they're really good in the offensive zone. They cycle the puck well, and they let them do that. And that's something you've got to get your body in the way. And I know they did a lot of checking, a lot of block shots, but at the end of the day, when the dust settles, they weren't strong enough in their defensive end. And also too, like when it came to the offense, it seemed like they'd go back and forth. They weren't consistent enough in the offensive zone as they should be. They had great rushes that got in, but it seemed like as the series went on, they were less and less apt to stay in that offensive zone and get 2-3 shots. They maybe get 1 or 2. Like if you're in that offensive zone in the playoffs, you stay in there, you shoot the puck, you get it on net, you generate something, get a guy in front. Because when they did that, they scored goals. And that's where they lacked, was that constant, like Monty said, that constant chaos in the offense. They weren't doing that. They weren't giving chaos. We're causing chaos in front of Hellebuck as much as they could have. And at the end of the day, that's what cost them the series. Besides 6-on-5.
Yeah. I did notice a lot of times if they did give up pucks or had 50-50 pucks, they were having a hard time. It seemed like their speed and their drive to get to the puck wasn't nearly as much there as it was for Winnipeg, because it just seemed like whenever the puck got into loose areas of the zone, that it was always Winnipeg getting to those pucks first. And that's something that going into the offseason and into training camp next year, they're really going to have to pick up on and probably dial up the speed factor of getting to those loose pucks and open ice, and working more at trying to be better in their defensive zone. But I would also say too that the one other thing that they utilized it well in the beginning of the series, but towards the end you really saw a fall off of their special teams. me and Brandon talked about it several times. It was like towards like once Game 4 ended, we had, I think it was what, 6 for 15 or 6 for 18 or something like that, and they were doing really well in the power play, doing excellent on the penalty kill, and then just from then on, it like the numbers almost seemed like they flip flopped to where they went over on I don't know how many power plays. They let Winnipeg start getting more and more penalty or power play goals, and I don't know what happened between from the time the series started to where it ended, but I felt like that was something that the Blues really struggled with towards the end of the series.
Mm-hmm. I think it was a lack of execution at the end of the day. Like, special teams hurt them all year. They were never like they got better at the second half of the season, but it was just always a deterrent for them. Just wasn't they were never solid enough in the special teams, and that affects you in the playoffs because the way you finish, no matter how well if you don't do that well on your special teams all year, you're not going to change. You're not going to turn the tide really in the playoffs. It doesn't happen. So that's essential. Like and I know that there isn't as many penalties called in the playoffs, but once you get those penalties, once you get that power play, you got to excel at it. And the same thing, penalty kill. You draw a penalty, you better kill that. You better kill it quick, or you're going to have some issues. And it cost them. It cost them at the tail end.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that was the biggest thing that I saw towards the last 3 games of the series, even Game 6, where they went 0 for 6 on the power play. Winnipeg was 2 for 6 or 3 for 6. It would have been 2 for 6 because they only scored 2 goals. Like that was the biggest thing that caught my eye was wow, where did our power play go? Like there was no way that it was doing so well at the beginning of the series and dropped off. And I don't, you can't just throw that into why they lost, but it's part of the reason why they were eliminated too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, coming into this series too, you saw this team do really good on the power play, and even throughout the regular season, they were really good at 5-on-5 even as well. And we didn't really see it towards the beginning of this series, but towards the end, I mean, they were doing very good on 5-on-5, not so much on the power play or the penalty kill. But I mean, just on like some positive notes of this series, you really saw Binnington coming back into his own with the. I mean, we said it a little bit ago in the that he was more or less the MVP of that series, and you don't really find that you see an MVP coming from the losing team of a series. And I mean, that's something that's crazy to say that your MVP, probably your best player out of that entire series, was the losing team's goaltender.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, he had a 2.53 goals against average and then a .902 save percentage in that series in the series against the Jets. And most of the time you have a goalie that has, right at 2.5 or 2.50, you win that series typically.
Mm-hmm.
Typically,
yeah.
They just happen to run up against and I know outside of the games in St. Louis, Connor Hellebuyck had pretty solid games in Winnipeg outside of maybe Game 7. But I mean, I told people before, like there was one point or talked to some people after they were like, "Oh, how do you feel about the Blues loss?" I was like, "That sucks," because they should have won that game. But there was a turning point where I think Winnipeg, especially Connor Hellebuyck, caught back to where he was in the regular season.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't remember who made the shot, but he made this glove save where he stuck his arm out and just kind of did one of these things. And I immediately went, "We're not going to win this game because they're not going to get anything past Hellebuyck at this point." His confidence after that, he stopped every single thing that he saw.
Yeah, from the third period on. Yeah, from the third period on, Hellebuyck he changed the tone of the game. And I remember I was watching. I can't remember what I was watching, but they said that Hellebuyck went to his teammates after that second period when right after he let the Fox goal in. He said, "I'm not letting anything else in," and that's a confidence. That's why he's a Vezina Trophy winner. That's why he's nominated again. That's why he's an MVP candidate. Because at the end of the day, as much as you don't think he's a good goaltender, or if you have your naysayers about him, he could still rise to the occasion, unfortunately. Now, Is that going to pan out in the second round? I don't know. We'll see what happens with that. I mean, Dallas is a different animal, but
Miko
he
Randy is a
had
different animal.
uh,
Good
yeah,
job.
you can say that again. But Hellbuck rose to the occasion,
Yeah.
and and not against Bennington, but against this Blues team. This
Yep.
Blues team did not pressure him enough, and kind of played on their heels in that third period, and that's what happened. That's why we're talking about the end of the season instead of the second round.
Right.
Yeah, pretty much. But I mean, even too with how everything kind of came out, the team I would almost say has a little bit of a clearer picture of what they need to do in order to, I guess, look forward to for next season. They know what they need to move on from. They know what they need to do better at, and I feel like with Jim Montgomery and the coaching staff, they're going to do everything that they can to obviously clear up the 6-on-5 or just those special teams moments where they really need to really dig deep and keep the opposing team from either getting power play goals or those last minute goals at the end of games. There's a lot more than just that, but those are just the little tidbits of here and there. But I mean, aside from that too, you have a young core that's really has the experience of being in the playoffs. They know what they expect from it all now, and really, after how everything had ended, I would say that almost the bone that that this team has probably got with how this series ended, that I would be, if I was any other NHL team, I would be probably having them on a watch of how well that of what is to come for next season. Because if I was any other team, seeing how the Blues went into the series and how they lost this series, and even that last game, that would be one team that I wouldn't want to be playing against in that first couple of games of the season, because they're probably wanting to come out and get to a quick start early rather than what they have done in the past and getting kind of cold starts. Wouldn't you guys agree?
Yeah. James, you can go ahead and take this one.
Yeah, no problem.
Looking
I
for
think
something.
when you end your season the way they did, and you hear the postseason, the end of season interviews with some of the players,
Yeah.
they are bugged by it. They're honked off by it. I think they're going to be motivated coming into this next season. They're going to have a chip on their shoulder, and they're going to use it to their advantage, just to prove that this wasn't an outlier season, that this team is back. Like Doug Armstrong said it best, the whatever is over. Like, it is done. He thinks this team is a playoff team. They all think they're a playoff team, and they're going to work like crazy. The whole staff, everyone from the Zamboni drivers to the players to the coaches to the GM and so on, they're going to make sure this team is a winning team and look for a deep run next year.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see what kind of changes and everything that this team is going to be making coming into this off season. Because I mean, really, you don't really see a whole lot of UFAs or RFAs really coming into the season. I mean, you have I think it's Foxa and Suter that are UFAs, and then you have Hofer as your only RFA really coming into this off season. And I mean, frankly, with the amount of money that Hofer was getting, I feel like he is due for a little bit of a pay raise. And Fox has almost worked his way into being somewhat of a core piece of just how he ended the postseason for this team. Wouldn't you agree, Brandon?
Yeah, I like the way not just that, but he gave that line, and I know as big of a guy as Nathan Walker is, that's figuratively talking, not literally. He how big of a guy Nathan Walker is on that line, that Fasca was just as important for that line, and it showed just the overall look of that line. You go a guy from he was 5'10" to Toropchenko, who's 6'5" or 6'3", however tall he is, and he's a massive guy too. That's a weird line to have to face every night. But he helped give that line identity. I think throughout the series or throughout the season, and that's what it was called, the WTF line for a reason. So I don't see any reason not to bring him back unless you can find somebody who can be better. That's the only thing. But I don't know if there's anyone out there who at that point that can be a difference maker on that fourth line like he can be.
For sure. Yeah, I mean, that's one of their core line, or their core lines, I would say, for this team, aside from your first line, who's really made more of an impact for a lot on this team over the course of the season. But I mean, coming to this offseason, when you both kind of agree that there are some holes that they probably need to be filled. I mean, Army cued a little bit that their top 4 defensemen are probably more or less set depending on how things look. But I would almost say too, maybe you include maybe a little bit of a middle 6, maybe offensive drive player somewhere in there to maybe, because it seemed like you saw a lot of contributions from the top and the bottom of this offense, and you saw a little bit of spurts from the middle part of the lineup. I just feel like if that's something that they use, maybe draft pick or one of the guys that Armstrong might have cued at during his end of the season press conference, that he could be making moves, or do you guys disagree?
100% Army's going to make moves. This is Army's last year as GM of the Blues. He is going to make the earth shatter, and he's going to go with what he can. He specifically said he wanted a 200-foot player. Yeah. So how he goes about doing that, I don't know. I agree with Brandon. I think re-signing Faksa would be a good priority. Mm-hmm. He's way too beneficial to this team. I don't know what it'll cost, but I'm hoping that he likes it here enough to give a decent, to have a decent contract. Probably be about $3.5 million a year. That's my guess. That's just if you read the tea leaves, that's the guess. But obviously, like one of his biggest priorities is to do that. And also, he mentioned also in point, like probably trying to sign an extension with Cam Fowler. And then, I wouldn't put that as a high priority because he's on here for another year.
Right.
But I think one of my priorities for the team is to go ahead and re-sign Faksa. Obviously, you got to re-sign Joel Hofer before he gets picked up by somebody else, because he's an RFA. So, and unfortunately, as much as I love it, Army also opened the floodgates for a chance that someone might steal him from there. So, and it's Army. The guy makes moves when you don't expect it. He's one of the best GMs in the NHL for a reason. And this is his last year. He's going to go out on a high note to set up this team, not just for next year, but it's going to be for the future. He's not going to make stupid moves. He's going to make the smart moves to build this team the right way.
It's funny that you kind of talk about this, because the New Jersey Devils GM came out today and was talking about how he wasn't happy with the series against Carolina and this and that and whatnot, and that there's going to be changes made.
Yeah, because they said they couldn't get the job done, so changes need to be made. So
do you think they go after somebody like what's his name? I'm thinking more defensively to help secure, fill in. I forgot what the guy's name is now, but even a guy like Hughes, from New Jersey. Like, do you? And I know Jordan Kyrou's name gets thrown around in this every year.
Well, and don't
it's already been brought up, and we're not even a week after the season's over.
Kyrou's no trade clause kicks in July 1st.
Yeah.
So, do they make that move? I mean, if you want to make some change, if you want to do that, unfortunately, it's got to get a little ugly too. Right. There's probably be a move or two. People are gonna scratch their head and be like, "Dang it, I can't believe they made that." But if you don't trade away Tage Thompson to get Ryan O'Reilly, you don't win the cup. Exactly. So change it. A choice has to be made that a lot of people may not agree with. Blues fans might be ticked off, but the move's got to be made if it's the right one. So
Right. That's what it
um,
comes down to, is if it's the
yeah,
right thing to do. Like,
yeah,
if you don't
and
feel like it's going to
apparently,
improve your team, then don't do it.
right, and apparently Army said that the checkbook's open according to Stillman. I don't know if Stillman agrees with that, but he said he's gonna
Well,
he's
I mean,
gonna do
it's
something.
especially too with the season that Kyra has had. I mean, he's had one of the better seasons of his career, and I
Mhm.
mean, yeah, with his no trade clause kicking in and on July 1st, that would
Yeah.
almost be a good kind of chess piece. Like, hey, we got a really good winger here. We're trying to make a few moves for our own team. Would anybody be willing to talk
Right.
numbers? And I mean,
Mhm.
to the numbers too. I mean, this team is going to be looking at. I mean, you're looking at 95 million cap, more or less estimated
Right.
coming into the next season. And with that, if everybody stays where they're at, meaning everybody resigns, if they were to keep at the same numbers, you would more or less have a $5.9 million cap space to where you could
Mhm.
do whatever you want with that money. So I mean, using that and with the players that you already have, and then the first round, fifth round, and sixth round draft picks that you have this coming up this summer,
Yeah.
you could potentially go out and get something that could really benefit and help this team.
Yeah. That doesn't even count Torrey Krug, probably more than likely not.
Yeah, that doesn't
Being
count
able to
Torrey
play
Cruz with him being on the LTIR.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
Yeah.
even if he retires, I mean, you're not going to be able to. You're going to lose that part of the money too.
Right.
It
That makes a
sounds like he's
difference.
not going to play. Like, he sounds like he's done. Like, he's not going to be able to play anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the way that's. Go ahead. Sorry, James.
No, I was gonna say, it's kind of a sad story that that's the way Torrey Krug's career ends in St. Louis with,
Yeah.
a debilitating injury to the point where, he's just now able to really get moving and, if to basically live a normal life, like he's
Right.
probably gonna hang it up. It's we don't know exactly when it's gonna happen, if it does, but no matter what, like Krug is probably done, and it sucks in a way because I like the guy. I thought he was a really good player for the team. He got a lot of flack because he was kind of the replacement of Petrangelo, as they said. But you know what? He was a workhorse. He hustled. He was a good contributor. And I never want to see a player go out on a low note like that. Injury wise.
Yeah,
I would agree.
I'm gonna have to. I have to bounce. I didn't mean to just to jump in for a little bit, but I have something that I didn't know we were doing come up, so I'm gonna have to go.
All good, man.
It's
Okay.
been fun talking
We'll
with you
probably
guys.
be a few more
Yeah.
minutes, and anyway,
Yeah.
so we'll be.
Sorry
But,
it was short.
yeah, you're good.
But I appreciate it. Keep talking. I'll see you guys
Will do.
later.
See you, man.
Brandon.
But I mean, going off of what we were just kind of talking about, you got a real window that you could potentially do something with. And I mean, as they said, that the whatever it is, either retool, rebuild, it more or less of how well the season has kind of ended and where they're looking to really progress from here. I would agree with it to the point of like you. And I know that they'll always figure out with what money they got to do with for UFAs or RFAs or whatever. But like this year going into this upcoming season, you're not really having to make a lot of moves and everything. But like going into the next season, I know we don't need to talk about it now, but I thought it'd be something that a good talking point is that you have a combination of 11 UFAs and RFAs that are going to be coming up for the 26-27 season. Anywhere from Joseph, Holloway, Tetsier, Sundqvist, Toropchenko, Bolduc, Walker, Broberg, Fowler, Leddy, Kessel. Those are all the guys that are potentially going to be coming up, not this upcoming season, but the following season. And it's that you have a really good window coming up in this next season, many seasons probably to come. It's just, for me, seeing the numbers that you have, and obviously the cap it more or less going to probably go up more going into the 26-27 season, but just seeing where the numbers are at now and what players you really need to focus on. That's giving you a lot of breathing room to say, hey, you know what, we might be able to use some of these guys to maybe heighten the team a little bit more. And I'm just really interested to see what Army and Steen are able to do with this team coming into the offseason.
Right. It's a good point, Brandon. And the good thing is the Blues have a management staff that is forward thinking, not just saying, okay, what are we going to do for the 25-26 year? They need to be like, okay, if I sign this guy to this, then he's going to have this contract for the next 3 years. What am I going to do with these other guys who are up for free agency the following year or the year after? It's a good plan to always think that way, to be a forward thinker. So that way you're not leaving the team, with, two flat tires for the next season after you had your Mustang humming all good all year, and then all of a sudden, like, oh, peace out, sorry, we got it, it's crap, I can't help you. So
Yep.
it's good to keep that in mind. So it's a matter of, who do you sign or who do you trade or whatever you do to give this team that 4 to 5 year window of success, or longer depending on what happens. But at
Yep.
least a lot of the cores in place with good long contracts that are now cap friendly, as opposed to what it was 2 years ago. Now that the cap is in a more stable condition, the Blues can make more better moves that are going to be more beneficial to players and the team.
Exactly. That's what I was kind of thinking with this whole thing, with having not as many free agents coming up this year, and you're going to be in better standing with your money. You know where your money is going to be going, and you know what money you can put to either other signings or trades, and you're not going to have to really worry about having to sign a mass amount of free agents back for your team. You can
Right.
put that off to a later date, because it's not right now, but you should always have that in the back of your mind. And I know
Yeah.
that's something that Doug and Steen and all those guys probably are already thinking of, but it'll be good to see kind of what all happens. But any kind of closing remarks before we get out of here for the day?
Again, I'll say it 1,000 times. It sucks this team lost in the playoffs the way they did, but man, I'm proud of this team. Like, they showed
Of course.
so much fight and so much no quit. And when it comes to the X's and O's, that's what kind of backtracked on them. I think that, like I said, that's going to put a fire under this team. There's going to be players that know that, like, they did not play up to the standard that they should, and we're going to take that into the offseason, and they're going to be ready to go. Like, it's going to be this 25-26 season is going to be something absolutely. It's going to, I think it's going to be a great year for this team, for the franchise and everything. And I'm looking forward to it. Like, I'm super happy to see how this team finish the year, and next season is going to be just off the wall.
Couldn't have said it better. I mean, especially with the newest guys coming in. I mean, that we saw at the very tail end of the season with. We saw Dalibor Dvorsky a little bit
Yep.
coming into the season. We saw Jimmy Snuggerud come into the team, and vastly. I mean, we had expectations of him, but I would say that Jimmy vastly outdid what those expectations of himself were. I mean, in the last few games of the season, and even into the postseason, of what he was capable of doing was far more than what I pictured of him being able to do. And I can't wait to see of what this new core dynamic of the Blues is able to do coming into these next few years, and how they're able to develop themselves into the hockey players that the Blues want them to be. It'll be really interesting to watch and see how they do.
100%, man.
But thank you guys for tuning in for our season recap show. Hope you guys enjoyed it, and thank you very much for tuning in. If you guys did to this point of the video, please go to, if you're on YouTube, please go check out STL Sports channel. That's where you can find all of our videos from the Blues, Cardinals, Battlehawks, STLFC, and even on Twitter. We've been having our shows a lot more on Twitter here lately. But if you guys liked our show for today, please tune in for future shows for all of your St. Louis sports. And until next time, guys, we will see you later. Go Blues.
Go Blues.